Alien Healer uncovers humanity's greatest secret, the power beneath the skin. A low, pulsing alarm reverberated through the glassy corridors of the remote research station's infirmary, its violet glow refracting off Syrah's translucent, shifting skin. Patterns of bioluminescent color rippled across her elongated limbs and torso, reflecting both her anticipation and anxiety as she prepared for her first unsupervised night shift. Her thoughts raced, calibrating protocols and recall of every emergency procedure drilled into her memory core. The silence was fragile, punctuated only by the hum of sterile air filtration and her own pulse, when the doors parted with a soft chime, admitting a team in crisp uniforms pushing a grav stretcher with practiced haste. Severe trauma, unknown species, human male. The lead medic announced, her voice clipped but steady as she guided the stretcher toward the primary diagnostics bed. Syrah's three triangular eyes widened, their crystalline glow intensifying with curiosity and dread. Humans were rare on this world, and even more so within the inner sanctum of the station. The subject of many theoretical lectures, humans had always seemed a distant curiosity to her, an abstract collection of data and anatomical models. Never before had she encountered one in person. She steadied herself, inhaling the cool, filtered air, and the delicate crystal crown atop her head caught and refracted the infirmary's shifting lights, sending a lattice of color across the ceiling. Stepping forward, she extended her slender hands, each finger tipped with fine, sensor-rich filaments, over the motionless figure. The patient's chest rose and fell with labored breath. He was tall, almost imposing, broad-shouldered even beneath torn, blood-stained fabric. The wounds were brutal. Deep gashes scored his left flank, bruises already darkening the skin, and her sensors vibrated with readings of fractured ribs. Syrah hesitated for a fraction of a second before activating her diagnostic field. The gentle hum of energy passed between her fingers and his body, and the unique rhythm of his bioelectric field pulsed up her arms, a fierce, unfamiliar current, unlike anything she had studied before. It was wild, almost untamed, full of stubborn life. Suddenly, his eyelids fluttered. Storm-gray eyes snapped open, alert and razor-sharp, locking onto hers with a force that made her heart jolt. "Where am I?" His voice was rough, raw with pain but holding an undercurrent of command. "You're at the research station's medical wing," Syrah answered, her skin swirling with startled color, a staccato pattern of blue and gold that betrayed her nerves. "I'm Syrah. You're safe here." He scanned the room, muscles tensing beneath ruined clothing, then relaxed fractionally, though not entirely. One large hand clamped around her wrist, gentle but unyielding. "Name's Mason, Science Division." "Please remain still," she said, regaining composure with effort. The medics withdrew, giving them space, and Syrah leaned in, letting her senses flow through the diagnostic interface. Her fingers hovered over his injuries, mapping the extent of internal damage, multiple contusions, several fractured ribs, possible pulmonary bruising. The density of his skeletal structure and musculature overwhelmed her sensors, each new scan flooding her mind with data, calculations, and a flicker of something unscientific, a fascination that felt dangerously close to awe. "First time patching up a human?" Mason managed a crooked smile, despite the pain tightening his jaw. Syrah's skin shimmered with a blush of pink and gold, the confession unspoken but obvious. "Is it that transparent?" she asked, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. He chuckled, the sound rough but warm, wincing as the motion sent a lance of pain through his side. "You look like you're seeing a legend up close." She forced her hands steady, striving to keep her touch clinical, but her bioluminescent pulses betrayed every new reading and discovery. Your physiology challenges several of our biological models, she admitted, her eyes shifting from his face to the monitors and back again. Glad to be of academic interest, he replied, his storm gray gaze following her every move with a mixture of amusement and exhaustion. Sira felt her bioluminescence brightening, a constellation of colors she couldn't control. She forced her attention to the diagnostic panel, tapping in commands to start the regeneration field. As she examined the extent of his wounds, her fingers brushed against a patch of bruised tissue along his ribs. Mason hissed sharply, breath-catching. You'll need immediate care and observation, multiple fractures, possible organ trauma, she informed him, her voice steady now, slipping into the comfort of procedure. Understood, doctor, Mason said, surrendering to her expertise but never quite losing that sense of coiled strength beneath his calm. Sira reached for the regeneration field controls, fingers brushing his hand for a moment. A jolt, electric and unexpected, flared between them, making her draw back reflexively. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Sira activated the field, bathing his wounds in a gentle amber light. As the healing frequencies began their work, she realized this patient might test every boundary she'd set for herself, scientific, personal, and something deeper she could not yet name. As the night wore on and Mason's treatment progressed, Sira found herself increasingly absorbed by the intricacies of human biology. The regeneration field hummed softly, casting a gentle amber glow that illuminated the rise and fall of Mason's chest, the deep contours of his shoulders. She moved in quiet, measured motions, her luminous fingers tracing over the sculpted muscle that ran from his collarbone to the edge of his shoulder. Each contact sent data surging into her mind, a complex array of healing rates, electrical responses, and subtle chemical signals that seemed, with every new scan, to defy her expectations. She tried to ignore the way her skin's patterns shifted each time she touched him. Iridescent swirls of color blooming across her arms and face, impossible to hide. Mason watched her, an amused curiosity flickering in his storm-gray eyes. Your muscle structure is remarkable, she murmured, unable to keep the fascination from her voice. Strength and adaptability, perfectly balanced. Mason's gaze lingered, his lips curving into a half-smile. You light up when you're interested. Is that normal? Or just when you're working on me? Sira ducked her head, the crystal crown atop her brow scattering violet light across the diagnostic console. She focused on adjusting the healing matrix, but her words came more softly than she intended. It's a reaction to bioelectric feedback, she said, though even she heard the slight tremor of something unspoken beneath her explanation. Mason shifted, wincing as he tested his ribs, but the movement sent a fresh wave of signals cascading through her sensors. A sudden spike of temperature, the taut coiling of muscle, the resilient rebound of his cells. Sira tried to remain detached, to see only the patient and the injury, but his presence was impossible to ignore. Just scientific curiosity, right? Mason asked, arching a brow, the hint of a challenge in his tone. Sira glanced up, meeting his gaze head-on, her own eyes refracting with a subtle green-blue. Could you flex this group for me? She requested, gesturing delicately to the bunched fibers along his upper arm. He complied, his muscles tensing beneath her touch. Her readings spiked. Strength, coordination, resilience. Even battered and bruised, Mason's body seemed to operate at a baseline far beyond any reference standard in her database. She marveled at the sheer tenacity of his cells, the rapidity with which the regeneration field was taking effect. Your kind evolved this naturally? She asked, awe coloring her tone. Such efficiency. There are entire chapters devoted to human adaptation, but this... She trailed off, shaking her head in wonder. Mason smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Generations of survival and training, Some of us just get luckier than others, he said, studying her with equal intensity. But I'm curious about your abilities too. Those hands, do they always sense so much? We perceive energy fields directly, Sira explained, feeling the familiar pride of her lineage, but also a vulnerability in how openly she responded to his questions. It's how we heal. Our skin, our senses, they're all attuned to the subtle flows of life and injury. Mason's temperature rose beneath her touch, the sensors picking up the faintest flush beneath his skin. Fortunate for me, he murmured, voice low and warm. Syra found deeper damage, a microfracture along the rib, a contusion hiding beneath resilient muscle. She pressed gently, leaning in to better focus the regeneration matrix. You took a serious hit, she observed, her tone sliding into the neutral cadence of professionalism, even as her skin betrayed concern with a pulse of cool blue. Had to keep them away from the reactor core, Mason said, jaw tightening at the memory. Sometimes you have to draw fire. Syrah's light pulsed with worry, a subtle shimmer along her collar and arms. That's a dangerous tactic. Effective, though, Mason replied, holding her gaze. There was a depth in his eyes, an unspoken history, a weight of choices made and consequences survived. Syrah felt her hearts flutter in her chest, an erratic staccato that she struggled to suppress. She catalogued his rapid healing, astonished by the resilience in his system. The tissue was reknitting faster than expected, even with her intervention. You'll need close monitoring, she said, striving for professionalism even as she struggled to ignore the warmth of his gaze. Wouldn't want to be an unsolved case, Mason teased, his hand drifting up to brush her forearm. A touch that lingered, deliberate, sending a shockwave of sensation up her nerves. Syrah stepped back, her composure faltering, but the bioluminescent patterns across her skin flared with intimate, unguarded colors. Shades of gold, blush pink, a ripple of deep indigo. She pressed a control on the diagnostic panel, focusing on the data, but her mind whirled with 1,000 questions and feelings she had never anticipated. She knew she should reestablish boundaries, remind herself of her role, the codes of conduct that governed her profession. But Mason's presence, his curiosity, his strength, his gentle humor, made every protocol seem suddenly fragile, outdated. The physical distance she created felt insubstantial, the air between them charged with something neither of them could quite name. Mason broke the silence first, his voice softer now. The bravado faded. You're good at this. Not just the medicine. The rest of it, too. Syrah looked at him, unsure whether he meant her bedside manner or the colors that betrayed her every thought. I am trained for all possibilities, she said, more formally than intended. His hand still lingered at the edge of her reach, fingers barely brushing the translucent fabric of her sleeve. But you weren't trained for me, were you? She hesitated, words tangled in her throat, and then shook her head. No, she admitted. I was not. He gave a small, knowing smile. Guess we're both learning tonight. The monitor chimed softly, displaying stable vitals, the regeneration field's readings already confirming what her senses told her. Mason was healing, faster than any projection. Syrah double-checked the data, careful to avoid his eyes, but her own pulse danced with the same erratic energy as before. Outside the infirmary window, the violet glow of the station's perimeter lights pulsed gently, echoing the rhythm of Syrah's thoughts. Inside, the hum of medical technology formed a cocoon around the two of them, isolating them from the rest of the world. She could feel the boundaries, professional, personal, cultural, slipping away, replaced by something raw and uncertain. Mason's gaze was unwavering, a silent invitation she could neither accept nor deny. The night seemed to stretch, suspended between the measured progress of healing and the unmeasured possibilities of something new. She realized, with a mix of excitement and apprehension, that her boundaries were blurring, and she wasn't certain she wanted them restored. The station's artificial night deepened, casting long shadows that stretched across the walls and pooled beneath the diagnostic consoles. Syrah sat beside Mason's cot, a tablet in her hand, its display awash in layers of luminous data. The muted hum of medical equipment and the rhythmic hiss of air recyclers filled the silence between them, while outside the viewport, the world slumbered beneath a shimmering veil of stars. Syrah's eyes flicked across the readings, their crystalline surfaces refracting with concentration. Mason's recovery was astonishing. His tissue regeneration outpaced every projection in the station's database. The numbers and graphs seemed to defy the slow, methodical healing processes she had studied, and each new scan forced her to revise her expectations. Even at rest, Mason's bioelectric signature pulsed with robust energy, a living rhythm that had grown as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. Behind her, Mason shifted on the cot, testing the movement of his freshly mended ribs. Syrah didn't look up, but her attention sharpened as she caught the subtle changes in his field. "You should be resting," she said, her voice gentle but tinged with reproach. Mason grinned, the effect slightly lopsided but no less charming. "I'll rest if you tell me what's so fascinating about those readings," he countered. Syrah's skin brightened, an involuntary shimmer of pale gold and coral swirling across her forearms. "Your tissue repair rate is extraordinary. Your muscles reinforce themselves at the injury sites, forming denser fibers than before. It's like your body learns from damage and adapts in real time." Mason shrugged, though the motion drew a fleeting wince from his features. "We get stronger where we're hurt. Part of the job description." Syrah's curiosity overcame her hesitation. She moved closer, the shadows retreating from the halo of light her body cast. "May I?" she asked, her voice soft, both question and invitation. Mason nodded, holding her gaze as she set her tablet aside and reached for him. Her luminous fingers brushed lightly along his healing ribs, the sensation sending a burst of feedback through her sensors. Muscle and nerve weaving together with astonishing precision, strength blooming where weakness had been. She let her hand linger, mesmerized by the intricate dance of cellular restoration. "You're in pain, but you hide it," she noted. Her attention split between the readings and the subtle tightening of his jaw. Her sensors tracked the minute flares of neural activity, the places where discomfort spiked, even as Mason's outward composure never wavered. "Comes with the territory," Mason replied, his breath catching as her touch found a particularly tender spot. "But your hands make it easier." His voice was softer now, vulnerability threading through the words. Syrah's skin pulsed with colors she rarely displayed, deep violets and shimmering rose, shades reserved for moments of intimacy and connection. Mason caught her wrist, his grip gentle, thumb tracing slow, deliberate circles over her translucent skin. The sensation sent tingling warmth up her arm, scattering her clinical detachment. "You don't have to pretend it's all research, Syrah," he murmured, searching her eyes for the truth beneath her professionalism. She hesitated, torn between obligation and the pull of something far less definable. "This isn't appropriate. You're my patient," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Mason's gaze never wavered. "I'm also willing," he said quietly, his heart rate spiking, a rhythm she could feel through her fingertips. "If you are." Syrah knew she should step away, reassert the boundaries she'd spent her life cultivating. But the strength and gentleness in Mason's touch made her want to stay, to explore the unknown that stretched between them. Her own heart's beat faster, a staccato echo to his single, powerful pulse. "Your kind shows remarkable restraint," she whispered, marveling at how he controlled both pain and desire. Mason released her, but his eyes remained locked on hers. "When do I get to learn what those light patterns mean?" he asked, voice laced with wonder and hope. Syrah's skin shimmered with a cascade of colors that glimmered and deepened, intimate hues rarely shared outside her most private circles. That's complicated, she stammered, words tangled in embarrassment and longing. Mason grinned, emboldened by her honesty. Like the way you study every move I make, pretending it's just medical? Laughter bubbled from Sierra, light and musical, her skin glowing with mingled embarrassment and delight. You're making this difficult, she confessed, not bothering to mask her reaction. Good, Mason replied, a playful spark in his eyes. Because we both know this is more than medicine now. The charged moment shattered as the infirmary doors hissed open. Chief Medic Relin entered, her posture rigid, eyes sharp beneath the severe lines of her cap. The room's atmosphere shifted instantly. Syrah's glow dimmed as she straightened, stepping away from Mason with practiced professionalism. Report, Relin demanded, her voice clipped. Syrah started to summarize Mason's progress, but Relin's gaze was unforgiving. You've exceeded protocol for direct patient contact, excessive examination, unsanctioned diagnostic techniques, unprofessional conduct. The reprimand was swift, echoing off the sterile walls. Before Syrah could respond, a security alert chimed. An image flickered onto the nearest monitor, footage from earlier that cycle. They watched together in silence as the display captured Mason's actions during the incident. Every move deliberate, every wound earned as he shielded others from harm, holding his ground between the threat and the reactor core, even as his own injuries mounted. The images were grainy, but the courage in them was unmistakable. Relin's expression softened, the harsh lines easing as she studied the footage. Continue your observations, she said finally, her tone less severe. We may have misjudged your approach, Dr. Syrah. With a final nod, Relin withdrew, leaving them alone once more. The tension in the room faded, replaced by a fragile intimacy. Syrah returned to Mason's side, her hand hovering above a darkening bruise on his shoulder. One she now understood was not just a mark of injury, but of selfless protection. You never said how you got these? She murmured, fingertips tracing the edges of the bruise with delicate reverence. Mason shrugged, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Didn't seem important, he replied, voice low. Syrah shook her head, her own voice filled with new emotion. It changes how I see you, she admitted, her touch trailing up to his jaw, the line of his cheekbone. Her fingers lingered, mapping the shape of him, absorbing the heat and pulse beneath his skin. Their faces drifted closer, the space between them charged with energy, her bioluminescence flickering in intimate, shifting waves, his breath warm against her lips. Every barrier, professional, cultural, and personal, dissolved as easily as mist. Strength is about choices, Mason whispered, his words barely audible. Syrah leaned in, her own energy field intertwining with his, the delicate static singing between their bodies. Their lips met, soft and searching, and the monitors erupted in a frenzy of color and sound, bioelectric signatures spiking in joyful chaos. The world narrowed to the moment of contact, every sense alive with discovery, and Syrah surrendered, for the first time, to the uncharted possibilities that lay beyond the boundaries she had always known. The artificial night wrapped them in privacy as Syrah's fingers traced Mason's healed scars. The gentle light from the diagnostic panels bathed the infirmary in soft hues, but Syrah's attention was fixed solely on the lines and whorls of new skin beneath her hands. Each mark was now a testament to courage, a story written in flesh and memory. Her touch was no longer clinical. Her hands glided down his chest, pausing over the steady, powerful beat of his heart, feeling the deep rhythm that had become comfortingly familiar. Mason watched her, his expression a mixture of wonder and fond amusement. That look, Are you still cataloging my injuries or just admiring the handiwork? He teased, voice low and gentle. Syrah smiled, the motion mirrored by a ripple of gold and pale pink that shimmered across her translucent skin. I've been studying you, she confessed, her tone softer than ever before. You defy every expectation: strength, control, recovery. Even your emotions have a pattern I can't quite solve. Mason's hands found her waist, warm and solid, pulling her close until there was no distance left between them. Pretty sure this isn't in the medical handbook, he murmured, his breath stirring the fine filaments along her jaw. We're far beyond protocols, Syrah replied, her crystal crown catching the glow as she leaned in, the points of refracted light dancing across Mason's bare shoulders. The sensation of his fingers trailing up her arm sent a cascade of vibrant color along her skin, impossible to suppress. How sensitive is your energy sense? Mason asked, his lips brushing the shell of her ear as he spoke, sending a shiver through her system. Syrah inhaled, her senses wide open. I can feel everything. Every heartbeat. Every surge. Your energy is like a storm and a current all at once, she whispered, the words vibrating with truth. Mason's hands tangled in her hair, his touch gentle but insistent, drawing her even closer until their breath mingled. Show me, he urged, his gaze searching hers for the invitation he hoped she would offer. Syrah let her professional barriers drop, surrendering to the moment. Her senses flooded with the rush of Mason's strength and control, but also a thread of desire woven through the tapestry of his energy. It was intoxicating, the way his feelings shaped the field around him, drawing her deeper into the space they shared. Your people were made for survival, she whispered, fingertips gliding along his jaw, tracing the edge of a scar. But you're so much more. Her words were as much a discovery as a declaration. Their lips met, the kiss slow and searching at first. A gentle testing of boundaries, then a hungry affirmation of what they'd both felt growing between them. Waves of sensation rolled through her system, each one building on the last, her bioluminescent skin flaring with patterns she'd never shown another being. Mason's strength was evident in the way he held her, but so was his care. His hands explored, never demanding, each touch a question and an answer in itself. When at last they parted, Syrah drew back just enough to see the play of color across her arms and face, the vibrant display more revealing than words could ever be. Mason grinned, eyes sparkling with mischief. Better check my vitals again, doctor. Feels like I'm breaking a few records. Syrah laughed, the sound bright and intimate echoing between them. Some data is best kept private, she replied, her hands still resting against his chest, savoring the solid, reassuring beat beneath her palms. Their connection deepened, curiosity blending seamlessly with passion. Syrah's fingers explored the planes of Mason's body, each new discovery, each demonstration of human control, bringing them closer. She found herself as fascinated by the way his heart responded to her touch as she was by the way his hands memorized the shape of her. The monitors in the background flickered with surges and vital signs, readings that Syrah knew she'd never share, no matter how thorough her medical logs. Mason's touch was equal parts strength and gentleness, his hands roaming her back, tracing the delicate lattice of light that followed the curve of her spine, learning her just as she was learning him. You're remarkable, he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. I never thought I'd feel so understood. Syrah pressed her forehead to his, her skin glowing with colors that signaled trust and belonging. You make it easy to forget what I was taught. To just feel, she admitted, her voice trembling with honesty. He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring the intimacy. I like this version of you, the one who lets go. She smiled against his lips, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. "I want you to see all of me," she said, the words carrying both invitation and promise. Later, as the urgency ebbed, they lay tangled together on the cot, limbs entwined, breathing in sync. Syrah traced glowing patterns across Mason's skin, fingers moving with delicate intent. The light from her touch painted his scars in shifting shades, each one a living memory. She studied him, pondering the paradox she'd come to cherish, the way strength and gentleness coexisted in a single touch. "Sometimes the greatest power is in a gentle touch," she murmured, her voice almost lost in the hush of the artificial night. Mason's lips found hers again, and this time, the kiss was unhurried, deep and true, proving her point in ways that had nothing to do with science and everything to do with the possibilities they had only just begun to explore. Morning found Syrah striving for composure as she checked Mason's wounds. The sterile light of the station's artificial dawn filtered through the medical bay, illuminating the precise angles of her face and the shifting patterns across her translucent skin. She kept her movements meticulous, but each time Mason brushed her arm or rested his palm against her wrist, her skin betrayed her, subtle pulses of indigo and rose flaring beneath her fingers. She adjusted the biomonitor with practiced care, pretending not to notice how his presence affected her. "You're healing better than any model predicted," she managed, voice nearly steady. Mason caught her hand before she could move away, his thumb tracing a slow, deliberate path along the delicate web of veins and filaments beneath her skin. "Is that what you're focused on?" he asked, his eyes full of playful challenge. Syrah felt her composure unravel. She tried to protest, but his teasing tone made her lips curve despite herself. "You were very thorough in your examination last night," Mason continued, the corners of his mouth lifting as he watched her reaction. Her response caught in her throat, half laughter, half admonishment. But before she could summon a reply, the doors slid open and Chief Medic Relin strode in, the station's security chief in tow. The air thickened, tension settling over the infirmary like a storm cloud. Relin's gaze swept from Mason to Syrah, her expression hard. "Dr. Syrah, your methods last night were unconventional at best. There are protocols for a reason." Her tone left no room for argument. "Effective immediately, you are reassigned pending review. The medical board will determine your suitability for continued field duty." The words landed like a blow. Syrah straightened, trying to mask her dismay with professionalism. The security chief, arms folded, nodded grimly in agreement. Mason shifted upright, swinging his legs off the cot with an ease that would have been impossible hours ago. "Syrah's approach saved my life," he said, voice calm but carrying the weight of authority. "She adapted when the standard treatments failed. Her adaptability is exactly what medical care on this frontier needs." Relin frowned, bristling. "We can't abandon established protocol every time." "The protocols aren't written for situations like last night," Mason interrupted, unyielding. "Dr. Syrah made the right call. If you want innovation, you need to allow it." Syrah met Mason's gaze, drawing strength from his support. She stepped forward, voice clear and measured. "The data I've gathered could change everything we know about cross-species trauma care. If we're willing to learn from it." She offered Relin her tablet, the screen alive with new readings and annotated discoveries. A tense silence stretched between them, broken only by the steady hum of medical equipment. At last, Relin relented, her posture softening. "You may continue as lead medical officer, but all procedures must be documented. Every deviation, every observation, logged for review. Is that understood?" Syrah nodded, relief flooding her system. "Understood." Relin gave a terse nod, then turned and swept from the room, the security chief following close behind. The doors hissed shut, restoring the fragile sanctuary of privacy. Mason immediately pulled Syrah into his arms, his lips brushing her temple as he murmured, "Impressive defense." She smiled, hands splayed across his chest, feeling the reassuring thrum of his heart. "Some things require a personal touch," she whispered, her voice colored with gratitude and affection. Mason's laughter vibrated through her, warm and bright. "Should we schedule another in-depth study?" he teased, sliding his hands along her back, his fingers memorizing every glowing pattern her skin produced. Syrah's professionalism dissolved under his touch, the lines between doctor and subject blurring into something far sweeter. "Strictly for research," she replied, her voice husky with anticipation as she leaned in to kiss him, her skin flaring with vibrant colors. Their passion rekindled, the clinical detachment of earlier forgotten. Syrah's fascination with human anatomy became a private pursuit, the boundaries of science and intimacy dissolving with every new exploration. She marveled at the fine control Mason displayed, his muscles responding to her lightest touch, his breath hitching in ways that sent data spiraling through her senses. She traced the strong line of his jaw, followed the arch of his lips with her fingertip, studying the subtle shifts in expression and the electric pulse of attraction beneath the surface. At one point, she pressed her palm against his cheek, delighting in the warmth and resilience. "Your recovery rates are astounding," she murmured, "but it's the fine control I find most remarkable." Her gaze flicked down to his mouth, curiosity burning in her eyes. "I'm especially interested in the tongue, pound for pound, the strongest muscle in the body, according to human texts. Is that accurate?" Mason's answer was a kiss, slow, thorough, and far more eloquent than any words. Syrah paid rapt attention to every nuance, every demonstration of strength and tenderness interwoven. She catalogued the sensations, the shifting patterns of pressure and response, and the ways desire sharpened her perceptions until the line between study and surrender no longer mattered. Their sessions became sanctuaries. Whenever shifts allowed and the infirmary was empty, Syrah and Mason retreated into the safety of drawn partitions and muted alarms, losing themselves in research that was as much about discovery as it was about trust. Syrah found endless fascination in the interplay of Mason's features, the flex of his hands, the arch of his spine, the minute contractions of muscle as he responded to her touch. She mapped the lattice of scars and the new, smooth skin beneath, learning his body with a reverence that was half science, half devotion. Mason, for his part, explored the luminous planes of Syrah's body, his fingers tracing the shifting colors, learning how his touch changed her patterns. "You're a living canvas," he said once, awe softening his voice. "Every color means something different?" She nodded, letting him explore, delighting in the way his curiosity matched her own. "Some patterns are for healing, some are for safety. And these?" She brushed his lips with hers, her skin glowing in shades reserved for trust and intimacy. "These are for you." Their private research grew ever more intimate, each session a layering of passion and revelation. They found a shared language in touch and glance, in the syncopated rhythms of heartbeats and breath. Syrah sometimes laughed, overwhelmed by the paradox. The more she learned, the more she realized how much remained unknown. One morning, after an especially long night together, she sat beside Mason, her fingers painting faint, glowing trails along his collarbone. "You know, some findings," she murmured, her voice teasing, "are best left out of the official report." Mason pulled her close, his eyes bright with affection. "I trust your judgment, Doctor." She smiled, content in the knowledge that not all discoveries needed to be shared. Some findings, Syrah decided, would remain secret. Cherished memories stored not in the data archives, but in the living energy between them. Syrah reviewed Mason's final scans, her skin pulsing with intricate patterns, bands of amber and electric blue running along her arms, fractal swirls of rose blooming across her chest. The readings on her tablet confirmed what her senses already told her. Complete tissue regeneration, no residual trauma, all vitals not only stable, but thriving. Mason sat on the edge of the medical cot, his shirt already half-buttoned, the line of a healed scar vanishing beneath her gentle touch. "You're cleared for duty," Sierra said quietly, her hand lingering on his chest, feeling the deep, steady thump of his heart beneath her palm. She let her touch linger a moment longer than necessary, memorizing the shape of him, his warmth, the resonance of his energy field, the way his gaze softened when he looked at her. Mason caught her hand before she could withdraw, pressing her palm firmly to his heart. "Maybe one last check?" he teased, voice low and coaxing. Sierra smiled, trying for sternness but feeling her resolve fade as he drew her close. "This is supposed to be professional," she protested, but her words were half-hearted. Mason's thumb traced slow circles over the sensitive skin on the inside of her wrist, sending flares of color rippling up her arm. Her bioluminescence betrayed her. No hiding the way her body responded to him now. Mason grinned, emboldened by her reaction. He leaned in, their foreheads touching, his breath warm against her cheek. "You can be thorough. I don't mind," he whispered, a playful glint in his storm-gray eyes. Before Sierra could reply, the doors slid open and Chief Medic Relin entered, her steps heavy with resignation rather than reprimand. Sierra straightened, her composure settling back into place, but Mason kept her hand in his, refusing to let go of the connection they'd built. Relin stopped at the foot of the cot, arms folded, her gaze flicking between the two of them. "Command is establishing a permanent human presence on the station. They require medical staff with demonstrated experience treating humans. Sierra, your research has been comprehensive." There was a wry twist to Relin's mouth, as if she'd resigned herself to the unconventional becoming the new standard. Mason's hands slid down Sierra's back, not quite subtle, his grin irrepressible. "Very comprehensive," he echoed, earning a raised eyebrow from Relin. Sierra's skin shimmered with hope and excitement, colors blooming brighter than ever. "I'd be honored to accept the assignment," she said, her voice trembling with anticipation and pride. She had never imagined her career would lead her here, at the intersection of science and something infinitely more personal. Relin regarded her for a moment, then nodded. "Your work will be reviewed for integration into medical protocols. Continue your documentation, and, Doctor, try to maintain some semblance of professionalism." Her tone was stern, but there was the faintest hint of approval beneath it. With a final glance at Mason, Relin departed, the doors sliding shut behind her. The silence that followed was charged, anticipatory. Mason wasted no time. He spun Sierra to face him, his hands settling at her waist, eyes alight with mischief and longing. "Ready for more research?" he murmured, voice thick with promise. Sierra's hands roamed across his chest, delighting in the flex and warmth of muscle beneath her touch. "Extensive research," she agreed, her skin glowing in vibrant, playful patterns. "It could take a lifetime." Mason's lips traced glowing trails down the line of her neck, his breath sending shivers through her bioluminescent skin. "Let's be thorough," he whispered, his words a vow and an invitation. Their private quarters transformed into a haven for both science and affection. The sterile lines of their professional lives faded at the threshold, replaced by laughter and whispered questions, gentle exploration, and the quiet awe of shared discovery. Syrah's sensitivity deepened with every embrace. She learned to read the fine fluctuations in Mason's pulse, the smallest catch in his breath, the way his energy field shifted in response to her touch. Mason's strength and gentleness thrilled her anew, each moment a revelation. They built a new routine together. Mason rising early to oversee the science division, Sierra tending to both human and non-human patients with a new confidence. But each night, when they returned to their quarters, the roles of healer and subject blurred into something far richer. Sierra traced her fingers across the planes of his body, learning the language of muscle and bone, mapping the subtle scars and the places that made him laugh or sigh. Sometimes, Mason teased her with mock seriousness. "Doctor, I think I might need another exam. Purely preventative, of course." She would arch an eyebrow, lips curving with amusement. "All in the name of research," she would reply, before pulling him close and letting her hands, and her lips, explore new patterns and new reactions. They experimented, delighting in their differences. Sierra found herself fascinated by the fine control Mason had over his features, the strength in his hands balanced by a tenderness that always left her breathless. She studied the way his smile shifted, how the muscles along his jaw flexed, how his heart responded to her touch. She traced his lips with delicate curiosity, marveling at the interplay of soft and firm, the way a single kiss could set her whole body aglow. One evening, as Mason lay beside her, Sierra traced glowing spirals across his skin, her voice soft and full of wonder. "I never imagined my first human patient would become my most important discovery," she confessed, her words both scientific and intimate. Mason laughed, pulling her close, his lips brushing her forehead. "You've definitely expanded my understanding of interspecies relations," he teased, his eyes warm with affection. Sierra laughed, the sound bright and unrestrained. "Some studies," she replied, her skin glowing with joy, "should stay classified." Mason's lips found hers again, gentle and sure. The room faded away, replaced by the steady rhythm of two hearts, two energy fields intertwined. Sierra surrendered to the sensation, to the knowledge that she had found something more enduring than data, a connection worth dedicating a lifetime to exploring, both as a healer and as something far more. That's the end of the story. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video.